This is Lightning Power Lunch on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
We played well for 55 minutes of the game, and it comes down to that little stretch there at the end, and that happens in the game, and we're going to take and learn from this, and we're not done yet, so we're just going to take it in the next game.
4 minutes away from making it 2-2 and 2 quick goals, and it's just obviously frustrating, but at the same time we knew we had to win 3 of the last 4, and now it comes down to winning the next 3, so we just got to make a good job of regrouping and make sure we take them on home ice and come back here.
It was tough losing the first 2 at home, so we have massive challenges ahead of us, and for 115 minutes we passed every test possible, and we just had a tough tough 11 seconds there at the end of the game, and it's unfortunate. We played well enough to win both games, and we came up a little short on this. To answer your question, is the series close? It's really close, and that's what makes this Battle of Florida so much fun, because it's 2 extremely competitive teams that play a great brand of hockey, and it's fun to watch, and that's why you get these tight, exciting games.
Exciting, controversial, heartbreaking. Yeah. I think everything.
Last night had a lot to it.
Man,
we'll get through it all.
This is a therapy session, so
yeah, we'll help the fans kind of digest what happened yesterday, and we were gonna pre-tape, and then I had some stuff pop up in the morning, and I'm like, it might make sense for us to go live because we may get some news from the league.
Were you talking to Aaron Ekblad? Is that what popped up?
We got some news from the league, so we're up to date. This is literally a live show. So yeah, so Nico Mikkola will not be suspended. He got fined. Ekblad has a hearing. So Ekblad, in all likelihood, will get suspended. How many games? We'll wait and see. We can break all of that down. So you know where I want to start? I want to start with this. So we heard from Chafee and Cooper. They mentioned it specifically. Not sure if Victor did. He just said, we were 4 minutes away from tying the series. Lightning fans may take exception to this notion that they played well for 55 minutes, or as Coop said, 115 minutes over the 2 games.
Right.
There were parts of the Lightning's game that you would have liked to see them do more with. Mm-hmm. This was a game in which if they had 5 scoring chances, 4, I'd be surprised. They generated very, very little on the Florida Panthers. And clearly sticking out like a sore thumb is this 5-minute major that they had at the beginning of the third, where they could have given it, at the very least, they could have given themselves a little bit of breathing room. And at best, they could have blown the game wide open. But they didn't. They had a subpar power play, and they managed only 1 shot on net during the 5 minutes. So I can understand why some fans may take umbrage with how the Lightning classified it. What I will say is this. This game resembled, in some ways, Game 2. Now, the difference is that the team that was down in Game 2 didn't come back to win, and the team that was down in Game 4 did. But both games had a controversial hit, right, and a major. But beyond that, both games were low shot, low chance games. So when the Lightning say that they played well for 55 minutes, what they're really talking about is they defended well for 55 minutes. And I do not disagree with that. Up until the end of the game, the last 5 minutes or 4 minutes, they'd really had one significant breakdown, and that was it. And that was the Lundell play where he scored. So just as the Lightning hardly had any scoring chances in last night's game, the Panthers hardly any scoring chances in last night's game. That's why it was kind of like Game 2. So there may, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but for the fans who were like, they sat on the lead, they didn't press the attack, they tried to, protect their way to a win. Like, had they kept doing what they had done through much of the first 55 minutes and really through much of the third period, and they win the game 2-1, we're not talking about them I don't think they rope-a-doped. I think that they were focused on protecting their net, just as the Panthers did in Game 2. We were applauding the Panthers' game in Game 2, even as we said, did they even have a scoring chance in Game 2? I'm not sure the Panthers had a scoring chance in Game 2, a grade A scoring chance. So this game was kind of like that game. So I actually do think the Lightning, in terms of the way the series has gone, both teams have set a very, very high bar defensively. And to the Lightning's credit, really over the last 3 games, they've been able to match, and in Game 3, I think they exceeded what the Panthers have been doing defensively. This is not LA Edmonton. This is not a series where there are a ton of scoring chances back and forth. This series has a much different feel to it. And the way I believe you are going to win games in the series, and the Panthers have done it, is to out-defend the other team. So, you know, the Lightning gave up 2 goals in 11 seconds. So did the Panthers, right? I mean, the Panthers gave up 2 goals in 11 seconds as well. It's just when they gave it up, it was earlier in the game. The Lightning were stunned. And by the time they were down 3-2, for a variety of reasons, it was going to be very difficult for them to come back. Right. So I feel the Lightning defended well enough to win the game last night, except that they didn't. And what I mean by that is they had 2 enormous breakdowns on the first 2 goals that really the Panthers didn't have those. The Panthers didn't have many scoring chances, but they had more than the Lightning, and they had 2 phenomenal chances that basically turned the game around. So what I will say is, all other things aside, and we can get to the hit, the Ekblad hit, we can get to everything else that happened in the game, that some of it was out of the Lightning's control. I feel like the Lightning do have their fingerprints for sure, as well as I think they defended, and I thought they defended as a whole very, very well in Game 4, except for the 2 breakdowns, which that's a major caveat. They own some of the things that led to this Panthers win. The 5-minute major would have potentially ended the game, and they didn't take advantage. Now, I will point out, the Panthers could have ended Game 2 when they got their major. They didn't, right? So, I mean, we see similarities there. The Panthers didn't score. They were up 1-0. They could have buried the Lightning. The Lightning killed the major, just that the Lightning never rallied. The Panthers did. But in Game 4, had the Lightning done anything on that 5-minute major, even gained some momentum and maybe kept the pressure up, they might have popped in a 3rd goal. The way that game was going, that might have been enough. And then the Ekblad goal. The Lightning had 4 significant mistakes on that goal. It started with an unforced icing. We've talked about this. The Panthers have already scored a goal in this series off an unforced icing. It happened in Game 2, the Nate Schmidt goal. So, problem 1, the Lightning iced the puck when they didn't need to, and they had, let's be honest, some tired guys on the ice. They had the point line, they had Hedman, and I think Moser. Braden Point is on the draw against Barkov. We've talked about how good Barkov is on faceoffs. Braden Point wins the faceoff. He wins the faceoff. Lightning have to execute a clear somehow. Get that puck out. Get these tired guys off the ice. Victor Hedman gets the puck. I believe he rimmed it, and Gensel tried to jam it at the boards, and it didn't get out. So now the shift is extended. There's some activity around the side of the net. It comes free. Gensel gets it again. And he tries to put it off the boards, and Ekblad blocks it. Twice the Lightning had chances to get the puck out, and they didn't. That is not high-end defense, right? So the unforced icing, the 2 failed clears, and then Ekblad is left wide open in front. I mean, the puck is down at the blue line, or up at the blue line, I guess, where Ekblad gives it to Reinhart. I mean, Reinhart's not really in a position to do much of anything there, except, as he did, throw it to the net. The problem was that the Lightning lost coverage on Ekblad. So, you know, the Panthers tied the game at 2. The Lightning, unfortunately, in the series, they have just made more significant defensive mistakes than the Panthers. And the Panthers are a good enough team that when this happens, they are cashing in. Lundell open in front, scores. Kachuk in Game 1, open in front, scores. Right? Bennett Game 1, open in front, scores. Ekblad, rebound, open in front, scores. Lightning really haven't had those looks because the Panthers have not allowed them. I mean, even Game 3, the Lightning, they scored on some odd mans, but it's not like they had guys wide open in front like the Panthers have scored, some goals in the series. So the Lightning had their fingerprints on losing this game. I'm not suggesting otherwise. I just think that in a series where defense reigns supreme, the Lightning have come very, very close to matching the Panthers' standard after Game 1. But last night, they made a series of significant mistakes that came back to hurt them at a crucial time in the game. And then off the face-off, I mean, that's just a lucky goal. I mean, I'm not sure the Panthers did anything special. They do dump it in with that hard rim. Remember, we had one of our fans talking about the weak side forward. That was that play. They won the draw. The left side D does a hard rim. It comes around the boards, and the weak side forward for the Lightning was unable to get to the puck. I mean, it was moving pretty quickly. I think he had a guy with him. And Lundell collects it, gives it to Jones. He just snaps one to the net, hits McDonough, and goes in. I mean, I'm not sure the Lightning really did anything wrong there. It was just puck luck, and the Panthers had some of that too. So that was your ball game, 2 goals in 11 seconds. But it was really the 2-2 goal that was the one the Lightning could avoid. And the last thing I'll say just about what happened at the end of the game in the third period, for those fans who are saying, well, they shouldn't have sat back, I don't think the Panthers had a scoring chance. I mean, Ekblad scored in the power play on another lucky bounce. It was a block shot, came right to him, but the Panthers were offside on the entry. So that doesn't count. Did the Panthers have a scoring chance in the third period until they tied the game? If they did, I don't remember it. They didn't have much going. The Lightning,
board, right?
Yeah. But the Lightning were doing what they needed to do defensively to bring this one across the finish line until they had the series of errors, one right after the other, that opened the door for the Panthers, and the Panthers walked right through it. And instead of a 2-2 series, you're looking at 3-1. And the last thing I'll say, and this is maybe a segue into the Hagel play, the 10 forwards had to do a heavy lift for the second half of the game. And in particular, the point line did a lot of heavy lifting in the second half of that game. And some of those mistakes that I referenced may have been born from the gas tank running low. So the Lightning were the team to choose to dress 11 forwards. They didn't have to dress 11 forwards, but that's been their MO. But when you lose Hagel halfway through the game and the Panthers are pressing and you're having to play very, very hard and at a very, very high level for half a game, you could run the risk of running low on the gas tank. And a tired player is more likely to make a mistake, and the Lightning had those series of mistakes near the end of the game.
I think a couple of things can be true at the same time, that the officiating no doubt impacted this game, but the Lightning also, when you take a look at sports collectively, control what you can control. If you're up in a big game by a small margin with an opportunity to close things out, and Lightning have been relatively good about that throughout the year, and you don't do it and you give up a couple of goals in 11 seconds, that's a collapse.
Yeah. The officials had no effect. The officials had no effect on the Lightning icing the puck there. The officials had no effect on 2 defensive zone turnovers on failed clears.
For sure.
The officials had no impact on the Lightning leaving Ekblad open in front.
Now, if you want to say collectively, they had an impact on the Lightning potentially being tired late in the game because they were playing shorthanded because of a bad hit. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
And that is that is an impact. There's no question about it. I don't want to minimize that.
And there's no question the Lightning would have been better equipped to win that game up by 1 in the third period if they had Brandon Hagel available.
Yeah, I mean,
I believe that 100%.
Those are facts. A few things that you had mentioned, and I just want to piggyback off of it. And we have a lot of questions, obviously. We want to get into it at Bolts Radio here. For me, collectively, people are going to talk about the Ekblad hit, and rightfully so. That was
we'll get to that.
That was a dirty hit. But this is on the Lightning. We talk about championship caliber team, the Dunna. You've heard me say that. And a lot of that is closing games out. And whether it was not winning faceoffs, whether it was failing to clear the puck, Quite frankly, I didn't like the Ekblad goal. I thought that was a juicy rebound on Vasi, and I, understand that goaltenders may differ with that particular play, but that was a shot from the point that maybe he was screened a little bit, maybe he didn't see it completely, but it was just it just was a juicy rebound. The first goal that the Panthers had, Perbix hesitates to get the puck.
Mm-hmm. It would have been an icing.
You had 4 people along the boards, which opened up the middle for the Panthers. That's a breakdown. That was an error. And to the Panthers' credit, they did capitalize on it. So I think the Lightning, the narrative coming out of this, no doubt, is going to be the officiating. I think that's low-hanging fruit. I'm not telling you you're not wrong to bring it up because we're going to talk about it. But if you're asking me, if you would have given me before this game started, the Lightning were going to have a 1-goal lead, partner, with about 4 minutes to go in the third period with an opportunity to tie things up at 2 apiece and head back to Amalie Arena and a chance to really change the complexion of this series in a very positive way, I would have taken that.
Mm-hmm.
I would have taken that because everything that you just said, I think the Lightning have defended pretty well in this series, maybe really well. And that I was going to believe they were going to find a way for the Panthers not to score at all, let alone 2 goals in 11 seconds. Oh, by the way, from defensemen. And I think that ends up being the quickest 2 goals by NHL defensemen in the history of the NHL. Like,
one of those defensemen was literally like 5 feet from the net, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. It happened,
right.
and it is what it is. The power play continues to be a theme, not in a positive way for sure. And those are some things that, look, the series isn't over, but I think a lot of people are going to reflect and say, okay, why did it struggle so much in these playoffs? Was it strictly the opponent, or is there something else there? I do think not having Bjorkstrand in the series.
And Hagel. I mean, Hagel has been unavailable for a lot of these power plays.
It's a good point. But just to start the series, having another scorer in Bjorkstrand, just another threat.
Yeah.
We talk about offense being hard to come by. I mean, we talked about the power play. Forget about scoring. How about generating some momentum?
Yeah.
Which we did see the Panthers do, a little bit with their opportunities. So I think there's a lot of areas where people can be disappointed. I think to be accountable, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, we had a chance with 4 minutes to go in this game to come away with a win, even though we were facing some adversity, even though we were probably extremely tired and we were shorthanded. Usually the Lightning come out on top in those situations. It didn't happen.
We saw it during the regular season.
Yeah.
What was they only had 1 regulation loss when they took a lead in the third
so,
period.
I mean,
the regular
those
season
odds,
is different, but
understood. But
yeah,
they've been playing good defense in this series. I mean, that's as John. I think that's the other thing, and then we'll get to, if you want to, the hit, and then we can get to some questions. I think for John Cooper, this is the part that's frustrating, is that you don't anticipate losing the first 2 games on home ice. You know you have a big challenge now, statistically speaking and practically speaking, going on the road and trying to even up the series. And, Dave, they were 4 minutes away from doing it. 4. And then, as you know, you come back to Amalie 2-2. Don't know what's going to happen with Hagel. You're dealing with some injuries. Maybe the Panthers win that game, but maybe they don't. And maybe you're just finding yourself now, and all of a sudden, you've got a lot of confidence about what you were just able to do. That kind of goes out the window. And, man, you've got to really dig deep now, knowing that the odds are really stacked against you, and you really do just have to look at this and say, how can we get 1 game? How can we get 1, and let's live to fight another day? But, and I'll segue into the hit, did not look good on Hagel. I have no idea how it's going to play out from where I sat. Forget about Ekblad being thrown out. Let's just talk about the hit. There was intent. You could tell he kind of had that arm ready to go, and he popped him. And he popped him good, and I understand emotions run high, and there's been some borderline hits in this series. We saw it from Hagel. We saw it from other Panthers players.
Kachuk.
Game
3. Yeah.
Heck yeah. but that felt, I don't want to say different. It was different looking. You could tell there was this intent, and man, that's not what this game is about. And I know some people say it's playoff hockey, but if you don't think that had an impact on the game,
no,
you're lying.
What I was saying to you guys before we went on the air, I thought back to game one. I think it was game one in 2023 when the Lightning played the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
And Michael Bunting elbowed Chernak in the face.
Right.
And Bunting got a 2-game suspension. That actually opened the door for Matthew Nyes, I think, to come in the series. And as they say, the rest is history for Matthew Nyes. But it's kind of like the damage is done. The damage is done. Chernak did not play the rest of that series. Who's more valuable to his team? Eric Chernak or Michael Bunting? Clearly, Bunting wasn't that valuable because the Leafs did fine when he was not in the lineup. Chernak was extremely valuable to the Lightning. And I'm sorry, I'm going to make the same case. Who's more valuable to his team? Aaron Ekblad or Brandon Hagel? Brandon Hagel is way more valuable to the Lightning. He had 90 points this year. He's one of the top plus-minus guys in the NHL. Power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5, 5-on-6. He drives play for the Lightning. Panthers managed to do just fine when Ekblad was out of the lineup, suspended, including winning the first 2 games of the series on the road. So it's kind of like maybe they would have seen the penalty. I don't know how they didn't see the penalty. I mean, the officials are right there. Now, the point about had Ekblad gotten a game for that, and I can tell you right now, if he's suspended, that means he should have gotten a game misconduct. He shouldn't have been in the game to score the tying goal. But even if they had issued a penalty, Hagel's gone. Hagel's unavailable to you. The rest of that game, we're going to see what happens moving forward. And I am sorry. Can I just say on the record, I am so sick and tired of hearing this narrative about Hagel hitting Barkov in the head. He did not hit Barkov in the head. The league bears some responsibility for this because on the video...
Are you seeing that more of it come out? Are you seeing more of it come out?
Well, they're kind of referencing it. Well, Brandon Hagel hit Barkov. There was head contact. Like they even said Tkachuk wasn't suspended because unlike the Hagel hit, there was no contact to the head. There was no contact.
I told you, though,
on Gensel's head.
In fairness, I did tell you when that hit happened, I said I think the officials thought it was a hit to the head.
But you can see in the replay.
I understand.
It's shoulder to chest.
I think they thought.
I mean, am I seeing it differently than these other people who are? Anyway,
I think they thought it was, and I think that's why.
They did the video on the suspension, and they're like, it was a high, hard hit. I'm like, it was not a high hit. Brandon Hagel leaves his skates as he's following through. Yeah. He stays on his skates as he makes the check. How many inches is he giving up to Barkov?
Yeah.
It was like if there was no interference, had Barkov actually touched the puck, I don't even think that's a penalty. The whole crux of the suspension was that Barkov never touched the puck. Fine. But enough with this talk about, well, Hagel hit Barkov in the head, so now he got hit in the head. Give me a break. I mean, if you watch the video, I don't know how you can say that Barkov, his head was affected when you're jolted like that. Yeah. And just like Hagel, when he hit the ice, he probably had a head blow. When Barkov hit the ice, I'm not disputing that. Anyway, that's my own little soapbox on it. It just, unless I'm seeing it differently than everybody else, and please inform me if I am, because I've watched this replay lots of times, and I do not see contact to the head. Anyway, this for sure was contact to the head. Like this was a forearm shiver right on the chin, the mouth, whatever you want to determine, got hit. And like we say, Barkov should not expect to get hit if he doesn't touch the puck. Fair enough. If you have the puck, you should not expect to get a forearm to the face. You shouldn't.
100%.
And it was a violent hit. So of the 4 plays that we've had in the series, if you were to ask me to rank them in terms of most violent and most egregious to least egregious, the Ekblad one is the worst of the 4. I would put the Mikkola one second. I mean, he got a game misconduct. That is a dirty,
It's a defensive
dirty
player
hit.
on his knees.
He's on his knees. He's got the play in front of him. I mean, he didn't crunch him, but he definitely hit him, and there could have been an injury there. I'd put the Hagel one third, and to me, the Tkachuk one was more of a bump. As we talked about, it was more the intent, right? Like, he went out of his way to hit Gensel well after the play. That was the least violent of the four. But for sure, the Ekblad one, to me anyway, and maybe I try and not put on my lightning-colored glasses. I'm not even sure if I have lightning-colored glasses when it comes to doing the show with you, and we try and look at things objectively best we can. The Ekblad hit was like, that was just in a completely different category. It was, because he was looking for retribution. Even though Barkov's is fine. Barkov missed the rest of game 2. Fair enough. He has not missed a minute since. He's healthy.
But are you surprised by that?
He's contributing. Hagel had to serve the major,
Yeah.
which affected the Lightning's ability to come back in game 2. He had to serve a suspension. So he missed game 3. That still wasn't enough for the Panthers. And the last thing I'll say, Greg, is you talk about hockey code. You talk about people, well, you got to answer for your hit. You know how it's usually done? The way it is usually done. You challenge Hagel to a fight. That's the way it's done. How many times have we seen a team is upset about a hit?
Lilleberg and the guy from Boston, right?
Right.
I mean,
that's what's done.
Yeah.
Not you run at the guy and forearm him in the head and knock him out of the game. That's not really how it's done.
That's dirty.
In the sport of hockey.
That is
yeah.
dirty.
Like you're like, Hagel, you're answering for your hit on Barkov. We're going right now.
Yep.
That's the way it's done.
Yep.
You have your tough guy. You have your tough guy take care of business here.
To be fair, I've also seen situations where the guy who got hit, in that instance, it would have been Barkov, challenges Hagel to a fight.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I'm
it's
sure
just
Barkov
like
is going to do that.
Yeah, probably not, but sometimes that's usually how it goes. But how do you, if you're the league and you suspend Ekblad,
he is going to be. I mean, he has a hearing. He's going to get
What's the repercussion
suspended.
for the officials who didn't kick him out of the game?
They won't work in the next round.
They probably shouldn't work the rest of the playoffs.
I mean, I think it was McIsaac was the referee. He was right there.
I mean, what do you?
And I mean, it had an impact. It had an impact on the game. Now, it had a positive impact for the Lightning in that they came right back. They were so ticked by this.
Yeah.
They scored their 2 goals in 11 seconds.
You know,
but that would be the repercussion that
Yes.
they lose the privilege. Like, the officials are graded through the regular season. They're also graded in the playoffs. So I know Paul Dvorsky pretty well because, you know, he resided. I don't know if he's still there, but he resided in Hershey when I was working there. So I got to know him a little bit. A longtime NHL referee. Now he's a supervisor. Whenever I see him in the press box, we say hello and chat. And he was telling me one time he was working, like he made the cut, right? He was working in a playoff series, he and his partner. So there were 2 referees, and they completely missed a call. I forget what the details of it, but it was clear that they messed up. He's like, I didn't work again the rest of the playoffs. So, I mean, they're graded in each round. We'll see if McIsaac, if it was him, I mean, I think he was the referee who was closest, who clearly just missed it. If he works in the next round. That's the repercussion. Last thing I'm going to say about this, and, you know, people talk about, you know, kind of justice on the ice, if you will. I remember when this happened because I knew Steve Moore as a player in Hershey. He was a Colorado draft pick, so he started his pro career playing in the minors. It was I think my last year in Hershey was his rookie year. But he's the older brother of Dominic Moore, who played for the Lightning. So Steve Moore, he was a prospect. He was a good player. And he goes up to Colorado, and there's a pretty fierce rivalry between Colorado and Vancouver. And Steve Moore hits Marcus Naslund.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly the context of the hit. If Naslund, I know it was a big hit. I'm not sure if Naslund was injured. Naslund had to miss some time, whatever the case. But it was the same sort of thing where the Vancouver was like, Steve Moore, you better watch out, blah, 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 blah. So the next time they play, Todd Bertuzzi sucker punches Steve Moore, hits him in the head from behind.
Dirty.
And Steve Moore never played again.
Brutal.
He sustained an injury. He couldn't play hockey again.
Life-changing, life-altering injury.
Because I talked to Dominic about it. It always asked, like, when we got to know each other, because he was playing elsewhere. He was in Pittsburgh, actually, for a while, among other teams. Dominic Moore came to the Lightning, and like, how's your brother doing? He's like, like, it was life-altering. I mean, I don't think that, he couldn't function, but that was the retribution. As opposed to Todd Bertuzzi saying, we're going. Right? And I don't know Todd Bertuzzi well, but I think I might have seen a story like he didn't feel great about that after it happened, because it's not really the hockey way. It's not. End a guy's career because you didn't like a hit he laid on your teammate?
Well, I think that's a culture problem still that hockey deals with from time to time. And unfortunately, you end up seeing some of these things that happen, and that's unfortunate.
But that's why that's kind of the quote-unquote honorable way, right? Like, you drop the gloves, mano a mano, you're settling it that way. You're not coming up on the guy from behind or blindsiding him with a forearm shiver to the face.
If the league wanted to clean all this up, they could. They could. They don't. I blame the league. You allow this to go on, this code, and, fighting in the league. But yet you want to protect people. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't want to get on my soapbox on that, but I think we all agree it was an egregious hit.
Yeah, unless, maybe Panther fans feel that it was okay. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speak for them. It's probably not universal, but there may be some pocket in their fan base that's like, well, Hagel shouldn't have hit Barkov, and
But that's separate. That's not. The question is, was Ekblad's hit dirty? Not if. Well, Hagel should have expected something. No.
Yeah.
Those are two different questions. The hit can be dirty, and Hagel also should have expected something. But not in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Not in that way. To your point, you want to confront somebody. You want to dance. Let's go dance for a little bit. And let's see what happens. All right.
So we have a note from Steve. Oh, there's a comment from a fan.
Go ahead.
You go ahead and read it.
Dave Jackson on ESPN said just that. He was turning, and by the time he looked back up, the forearm was in Hagel's cheek, pushing him down. He missed the split second of him being forearmed in the face.
All right. Fair enough. So Dave Jackson is a former referee, former NHL referee. He's providing, in-time analysis. He's basically a resource for the broadcast. So let's give McIsaac the benefit of the doubt in that split second that he missed it. You see Hagel on the ice, clearly injured. You figure that something happened, right?
Yeah.
You can confer with your officials, and you can call major. It allows you to look at it on video. That's what we've seen in the series.
Yeah, you can.
Instead, they decided to do nothing. Nothing.
I can't believe that to some extent.
Like, you can say, we have a major penalty for an illegal hit to the head. Go look at it. Penalty rescinded. Like, if it proves not to be the case. That gives you an opening to look at the video in case you did look away for a split second. So I still don't feel that this exonerates the officiating crew.
Yeah.
They could have found a way to figure out what happened.
I mean, at the very least, can't somebody from the league call in and say, look, you got to get him out of the game? If you guys aren't going to call it, if that's your call, we got to take another timeout.
The league intervenes in some ways, but not for not to
why not?
summon officials to the video booth to look at a hit.
Wait a minute. You guys aren't going to knock him out of the game? Get over here. I'm going to tell you why that needs a change. All right. Brenton on YouTube says the power play's been awful. It's one of the biggest reasons why the Lightning are now. Well, he says 2-2, but that's...
Are not 2-2. All right, so Brenton, yes. And the Lightning had been able to do something in the power play, it really would have helped.
Yeah.
But as I've repeated myself many, many times, you can win games with a dry power play. The Lightning were 4 minutes away from winning the game last night, having squandered their 5-minute major power play. Had the major power play contributed something? Would that have helped? Absolutely. There's no question. But You know, this is the sort of series it's been. The Panthers haven't scored a power play goal either since game 1. Like, these teams are D'ing up, and their penalty kills have been really, really strong. So, yes, the Lightning have to take ownership of the fact that they did nothing on the 5-minute major. But is that the reason why they're down in the series? I mean, it's one escape hatch. Like, you know, it can help offset an isolated mistake here and there. They had no margin for error because they didn't score on the power play, but they were still up 2-1 with 4 minutes left, having played a really solid defensive third period up until that point. So that's where I differ a little bit. I'm not disagreeing that, you know, power play proficiency would really, really help the Lightning in some of these games. Game 2, they went 0 for 5. Just needed a goal. Game's tied.
Let me ask
they
you
couldn't
this.
get it. But because they've D'd up so well after game 1, because they've D'd up so well, you know, they've been in the 2 games they've lost. They've been 1-goal games, and they were up in game 4.
Play devil's advocate with you because you've been pretty good about this. And I don't think you're wrong about, you know, if you had to give me the choice, strong PK over the power play. Has that changed a little bit for you in this series, knowing that the power play, you can make the argument, has let them down?
I think the power play has let them down. I'm not disputing that. But they could have won the game last night with the power play letting them down. That's what I'm saying.
Sure.
The power play being ineffective was a reason why they didn't win the game last night, but it wasn't the only reason. I think the bigger reason was they had those miscues at the end of the game, and they were short. I thought they ran out of gas.
Well, because of the hit to the head.
That's what I mean. They were down to 10 forwards.
The officiating.
They have to own the fact that they dressed 11 forwards. Braden Coburn actually said that to me. He did the game with me. We were entering the third period, and he's like, this is going to be a heavy lift for these 10 forwards. He's like, I wonder if they'd even consider throwing a D up to help with some of the minutes.
That would have been an interesting question to ask.
Yeah, and I asked him that after the game, and he's like, the way they play, like, you have to have some experience along the boards, the way they pressure in the D zone.
Yeah.
So Braden Point played almost 24 minutes. Now, of course, they had a lot of power play time on the major, but still. Gensel played over 24 minutes. Kucherov played 25-32. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And these are not like light minutes. These are playoff minutes. And they were the 3 guys that were out there when Ekblad tied the game.
Valid point. A very valid point. I want to mention something to you, by the way. When Hagel went down, Ben Pierce mentioned it to me during the second intermission report in between, and he said, I guess Brian Boyle ended up tweeting something out.
Yeah, I saw that.
He was like, that's a sign that the teammates love their teammate. You know, they go out there and they respond the way they did. And I thought that was a pretty cool way to put that. Chris on YouTube says, what a terrible collapse and just ineffective power play. Series is all but over unless they can pull off a miracle.
Well, I don't know that the series is all but over, because if Game 5 follows the path of the last 3 games, it's going to be tight checking, scoring chances limited, and it kind of comes down to which team can make the extra play. Now, there are some things the Lightning probably could do better in terms of generating shots and scoring chances and pressure. They haven't been able to do it, and that includes on the power play. I'm not going to argue with the fans that 1 for 15 on the power play, when you've had a top power play all year, hasn't been important in the series. It has. But that is not the only reason why the Lightning are down 3-1.
Yeah. No.
It just it's taken away any margin for error defensively. And they made just enough mistakes defensively in some of the game. I mean, game 1 was an aberration. But in game 2, they didn't make a lot of mistakes defensively, but they lost the faceoff, and they don't get a save from Vasilevsky and a really tough shot from Schmidt, and that was your ball game. And then last night they had really 2 breakdowns, and they both ended up in their net, and that was that. And they had a bad bounce on the winning goal.
I was thinking about this last night after the game. You can go back to when this team entered the playoffs with John Cooper, the beginning of his career till now. I mean, I mean, I do think there was a little bit of a collapse at the end. A little bit, lots, whatever you want to use to describe it. It's got to be one of the worst losses under John Cooper in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, would you agree?
I can't remember them blowing a 1-goal lead this late in the game and not even losing in overtime. I mean, against Toronto in that 2023 series, remember O'Reilly scored a 6th attacker goal?
Yes.
And Toronto ended up winning in overtime. Like this, though,
this felt
I'm
different.
hard-pressed to remember it.
Yeah,
and
this
we'll
one's
see how
gonna
they push
sting.
back. So the fan was saying it's over. Like, I think the Lightning will compete in Game 5, but something that we've been banging the drum on through much of the year, Greg, was about they needed more forward depth.
They did.
They needed more forward depth. And they end up adding Gordon Bjorkstrand at the deadline. That helped. But now they're without Bjorkstrand, and they've had to play much of the series short in some way or another. Cirelli missed half of Game 1. Hagel missed half of Game 4. Hagel suspended for Game 3. It has really taxed them, and maybe it has taxed their top guys, where, you know, the Panthers are like, we're loading up on the top guys, right? I mean, it didn't really work for them too well in Game 3 because, you know, Kucherov and Gensel made some plays.
Yeah.
But it has made it harder, I think, on the Lightning's top guys because, I mean, they've been missing some key pieces. Oliver Bjorkstrand was going to be a really important part of how the Lightning were going to complicate things for the other team.
Yeah, it's fair. I think that's fair.
And, you know, two of their best forwards not on the top line, Hagel and Cirelli, have both missed time in the series.
I know.
And the Panthers, other than the Barkov last, whatever it was, 10 minutes of Game 2 and playing without Ekblad in the first 2 games, which they were used to doing that, they've been injury-free. So they've been able to kind of roll their lineup. That's part of the playoffs. It comes with the territory. Part of winning a Stanley Cup is either avoiding injury, which is up to the hockey gods, or if you get injuries, you hope that the injuries are not significant, or if, God forbid, you have a significant injury, it's not to one of your game breakers, right?
That's fair. Dan on YouTube says, things that are broken are power play in the Department of Player Safety.
Well, Dan, you probably are not alone in feeling that in Lightning land. The Panthers have done 2 things really, really well on the penalty kill. They have pressured the puck carrier and forced plays. And a lot of these power plays, I know we have Kucherov out there, we have Point out there, we have Gensel out there, we have Hedman out there. Like we being, you know, I'm not saying we the Lightning, but like observing, you know, we see them out there and they are, you know, some of the best players in the NHL. But, you know, they spent much of the power play with Hagel. Hagel has not been available for at least several of these power plays. And the unit that they really wanted was going to have Bjorkstrand on there as another righty who could shoot. They haven't had him in the playoffs. So some of it is a little bit like they're trying to work through how they want to work the power play, missing some players, which is not ideal, but also high marks to the Panthers. They have pressured the puck extremely well. And when they've gotten the puck down the ice, they made it very hard on the Lightning re-entering the zone. 2 very important keys to why they've gone, 14 out of 15 with 2 major kills. I mean, the one in Game 3, I'm not sure the Lightning were really pressing on the gas, but the one last night, the Lightning would have loved to have gotten a goal to make that Game 3-1. They didn't. It would have been like Game 3, right? 2-1 going into the third. The Lightning scored early in the third period of Game 3, and you know that really put the Panthers in a big-time hole.
You know, something to think about. I know the series isn't over. It's probably going to be one of those whenever that is, whenever the Lightning are done playing. Hopefully it's after a Stanley Cup run, although we're probably not asking this question, is that the struggles in this series to score, whether it be on the power play, whether it be a little bit more 5-on-5, I think they were correct in addressing the depth to help with their scoring.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if it becomes more of a priority in the offseason. You know? And
Julian is not one to sit idly by ever.
Yeah. I mean, you've got some young guys coming up, we know, but you know the Howard thing is up in the air. I think a lot of people thought that could have been that could have been, you know, Geeky's still a work in progress, although I think everybody likes what they see. Gonsalves looks like he took some steps, but they traded for Bjorkstrand and Gord, and let's focus on Bjorkstrand. That's a guy who's a 20-goal scorer. But if things start
And
to
he's
get
under
a little
contract next year.
and he is. But do
Yeah.
you do something a little bit more drastic if you feel like, okay, we've been bounced in the first round, to shake some things up because what you're doing isn't perceived to be working? And again, the goal for this team is championships, and that's the standard, and it should be. It's not to get to the playoffs. And when you stall out a little bit here, what are you doing to address that? And sometimes you have to make tougher decisions that can change how things play out. All teams do it, and the Lightning did it last year with Steven Stamkos. Let's be very clear.
Yeah, but I'm going to just repeat myself, Greg. I mean, the Lightning wanted Stamkos to return. They just couldn't agree
Just
on
at
a
his price.
contract. It's not
Yeah,
like
at
they
their
said
price.
goodbye. Yeah.
Right. At
So
their
they
price.
made the hard decision, but it wasn't
Yeah.
the decision was, we don't want him back on the team.
Right.
They had different ideas about kind of how the contract should be structured.
Sure.
Anyway, so I'm going to give you two examples. One involves the Lightning. One involves their opponent, the Florida Panthers. So 2019, the Lightning win 62, and they lose 4 straight to Columbus. So a lot has been made of what the Lightning did and didn't do during that offseason after that huge disappointment. And what they didn't do was blow everything up. They didn't. They made some changes on the edges. They kind of assessed. They took a scalpel to it, not a chainsaw. And they were like, let's get a little bit tougher, harder to play against. But when I say that, what I mean is they added Luke Shen. They added Pat Maroon. They added Bogosian at the deadline. They added a sandpaper guy like Goodrow at the deadline. Coleman, too, if you want to include him in that kind of category. But they didn't move any of their major pieces off their team. They said, we like our team. We kind of had a bad week, but also let's just not say, well, it was a bad week. Let's figure out how we can get better. And then they won the Cup the next year, and then they won the Cup the year after. I don't know if that is going to be, if they go out in this series, I don't know if Julian will feel the same way, because it'll be 3 years in a row that they will have lost in the first round. So the other example I'm going to give you is what Bill Zito did after the Panthers lost in the second round in 2022. So the Panthers' trajectory, they've had Barkov for a while, but Barkov was kind of, he and Huberdeau were kind of pulling the rope mostly themselves for a number of years where the Panthers couldn't get in the playoffs. And, they started to get a little bit better. They signed Bobrovsky, right? So they were in that best of 5 in the bubble and lost to the Islanders. Remember, the Islanders, of course, got to the semifinals and the Lightning, or the conference finals, I guess it was, in the bubble, and the Lightning beat them. So in the play-in round, Islanders beat the Panthers. That was 2020. 2021, Panthers improve. They finished second in the division. The Lightning beat them in the first round in 6 games. The next year, they win the President's Trophy. That was when they made the change from Quenneville to Andrew Burnett early in the season. Mm-hmm. They win the President's Trophy. They win their first round series against Washington, then they get swept by the Lightning. And let's be honest, 4 close games. I mean, the games were close, but they lost all 4. What does Bill Zito do? He trades Huberdeau and Weegar and gets Matthew Tkachuk. That is a bold move.
That's
I mean,
a very bold
Huberdeau,
move.
wasn't he like 3rd in assists, I think, that year? I mean, they were a high-scoring team, the Panthers, but that's another way to go. And it's hard to argue with that decision now with the benefit of 2020 hindsight. I mean, that wasn't the only move he made. He had already gotten Forsling. Like, Forsling was on the team. Forsling's been a great pickup and all of that. But, and, they had some other guys. They had Montour, who would be a big part of their Cup success. They added Verhaeghe. They'd had him for a couple of years. But, trading one of your top offensive guys and one of your top defensemen to bring in another top player, but a different sort of player, that is extremely bold. So we'll see. I mean, Julian is nothing if not bold. He is bold.
Yeah, he's bold. Yeah.
And he's a little, and I mean this in a complimentary way, like he can be a little cold-blooded. Like he's just like, this is what needs to be done what needs to be done in the best interest of the team. And that is my job.
I think
to
that's how you look
oversee
at
the
it.
best interest of the Tampa Bay Lightning.
For the team.
But we're not there yet.
No.
I mean, so look, putting the other side of the spin on this, Hedman said, we knew we needed to win 3 out of 4, now we need to win 3 in a row. of these 3 games, yes, you need to take them one at a time. All of that is true. They're going to have to, if Hagel can't go, they're going to have to come up with a solution in his absence. They did it in game 3. Can they do it again in game 5? We'll wait and see. For what it's worth, I thought Chafee, he scored a goal. I thought he had another good game. And with the Lightning short at forwards, Chafee was playing in a more elevated role too in the second half of that game. Anyway, the Lightning are now 1-8 in their last 9 home playoff games. That is a staggering stat going back to games 4 and 6 of the 22 Stanley Cup final against Colorado. They lost both those games. They lost all 3 home games in the 2023 series against Toronto. All in overtime
games, yeah.
Yeah, they split with the Panthers in their 2 home games last year, and then they lost the first 2 this year to Florida. At some point, this is going to flip, all right?
Yeah.
Like, just the law of averages, and they've been a good home team through these years.
Right.
They are due to win some home games. I know it doesn't really work that way, but it kind of does. Like, the law of averages is, like, they're going to start winning some home games. They're going to need to win some home games that they get back in the series. 2 of the 3 games they need to win are at home. How much does the series change a little bit if they win game 5? I don't know. The Lightning have to worry about winning 1 game, but this is a little different. First of all, it's not down 3-0. 3-1 is different than 3-0. And they will have 2 of these 3 games at home. Yes, they need to start winning at home.
For sure.
But you have to believe this is going to start to happen at some point in the playoffs. They've lost game 1 was a blowout. But a lot of these games have been very, very close, and they've just been on the wrong end of a close final. It certainly happened in the 2 games against Colorado. It happened in the 3 games against Toronto. It happened in game 2 this year.
It's been pretty evenly matched outside of the first game.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how we thought this series would be. We just didn't think it'd be 3-1. We'd probably thought it was somewhere in the middle.
Well, I did say I felt the road teams would have success in the series, and the Lightning, as I talked about in U2, they were 4 minutes away from
4 minutes away. You're right,
making it 4 road wins already in the series. But the Lightning need to obviously win tomorrow, but they will have last change. I don't think Ekblad is going to be in the lineup. I think he will be suspended.
Yeah.
I don't know. If people think he's only getting 1 game, hold on, folks. Let's see what the DOPS decides to do here, because they are not. Here's another thing I think happened, and this is me thinking this happened, but I don't know if it happened. But did we see a lot of post-whistle scrums yesterday, Greg, compared to the other games? Not really.
No.
Why do you think that was? The importance of the game, but the other games were important too. I think the director of the supervisor had a little chat.
You think he said something?
I think so. Yeah. Like, this nonsense needs to stop. I that's my guess. I don't know if that happened or not. Nobody told me that.
Yeah.
But every series has a supervisor, and based on what we saw in game 4, it did look different than the earlier games in the series. So if that directive was handed out, to see Ekblad do what he did is not going to sit well with the league. That's my guess. He may only get 1 game, but we'll see.
I'm going to say 1.
I'm expecting he's not going to be available for tomorrow's game, and Balinskis will come back in. They're going to use the same lineup that they used for the first 2 games, maybe with the exception of Greer in for Samoskevich.
Chris also says, let's speak the truth. Florida is bullying and kicking our butts, waiting for somebody to step up and fight back.
What do you want them to do, Chris?
Yeah, I don't know. Fighting. They do anything.
They were all these post-whistle scrums. The Lightning were giving as good as they got. Do you want one of the Lightning players to deliver a forearm shiver to Sam Reinhart? That's not really. Then that player is going to get penalized, and that player is going to have a 5-minute major, probably. They may have missed one. They're not going to miss a retaliatory one.
And when I say maybe he means fight back, maybe just more, pushing and shoving and that type of thing. I don't know.
The response, 2 goals in 11 seconds was their way of fighting back.
Yeah.
And they got
Tampa
the
Bay.
lead, and they tried to lock it down, and they almost did it. I know that's fluffing over the major,
Sure.
which I'm not. If you've listened to the whole show, fans, the major was a huge missed opportunity. But I thought the Lightning showed fight after seeing Hagel go down the way they responded.
No, they did.
After that, it was just in a different way.
Yeah. We got to interpret what he means by fight.
Yeah.
Champaban X says, words can't describe what unraveled the last 3 minutes. It's probably the most heartbreaking loss I've seen. It's been so frustrating and disappointing when we haven't had Hagel for half the series, and Kuch's goal drought still continues. That's been something that hasn't been talked about a ton, right, partner? He's getting some assists, but
right.
When's the last time he scored a goal?
It's over how many years? So it's not like 13 games in a row, like over the span of a month.
Right.
He is getting some assists.
Yeah.
If the power play had been more productive to this point in the series, he probably would have scored a goal.
Yeah, and credit to the Florida Panthers for that. I mean, that is something that they've really pressured him, and because of that, the power play has been a little discombobulated, maybe a lot discombobulated. You take Kucherov out, you're seeing how things happen a little bit. Chris on Facebook says, non-calls aside, coming up empty on the 5-minute power play with 0 shots is what lost this game for the Lightning.
Well, they credited them with 1. Was it Chris?
Chris on Facebook, yep.
Yeah, I actually don't remember the shot, but it showed up on the stat sheet, so statistically they were credited with 1. But yeah, it was a very quiet power play. It could have buried the Panthers, and they didn't. But at the risk of repeating myself, they still were in a position to win the game until they made those critical mistakes.
What did you think of the Ekblad goal? I felt like that was one Vasi would like to have back. The juicy rebound, I think, is what
I was more focused on how open he was.
Right.
But you may have a point there. There was some traffic between him and Reinhart, but it was more high traffic.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the fact that Ekblad was
And that was Schmidt
open.
on the shot, correct?
No, it was Reinhart.
It was Reinhart, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Nate Schmidt's been everywhere. Why not? Right? Sam on Facebook says, we need to get the puck out of our D zone effectively. No more halfway clears.
Well, that has been a problem at points in the series. It was not a problem in the third period until it was. I actually liked their third period defensively. I liked how buttoned up they were. They were making plays out of trouble. They were getting pucks in deep. They probably had even a little power plays aside. Both teams had the power plays early. Lightning had the 5-minute, and then the Panthers had a power play. As Point took a penalty with a few seconds left in the major. Once we got to 5-on-5, the Lightning probably had a little more possession than the Panthers. Lightning were executing well coming out of their own end.
Yeah.
But as we said at the top of the show, unforced icing, 2 failed clears, blown coverage.
And again, you give credit for the Panthers keeping that puck in. You got to do that, but you have to get those pucks out.
Yeah,
you just do. I don't know what else to say. Craig says on Facebook, for a team with one of the best goal differentials in the league, the playoffs have been very frustrating. You got to take the first game out, which you can. I understand that, but
right.
I understand the frustration, Craig, on Facebook. Is that Colin or Cologne on YouTube says this 3-1 is different from last year's. Feels like the Penguins 2011 series.
Yeah, and in that series, I think that is the only time the Lightning have won a series when they were down 3-1, and they did have to win 2 of the final 3 on the road. So I will tell you, I remember that 2011 series. I thought the Lightning got pretty significantly outplayed in the first 4 games. Maybe so they won game 2 in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
They kind of popped in some goals. Fleury had a bad series.
Yeah,
his save percentage wasn't very good. The Lightning scored on the chances that they got. They didn't have a lot of pressure. The Penguins, in terms of like the metrics, I don't think they kept track of the metrics then.
They dominated that series.
Dominated the first 4 games possession-wise. Right. I remember James Neal scored in double overtime in game 4.
From the wall and just threw it on net. But
the Lightning barely had the puck for, the first overtime into the second overtime. They were kind of lucky that it lasted that long. And I'll say, even in games 5, 6, and 7, I'm not sure the Lightning owned the possession metric. They won game 5, 8-2. It was like, I think I told you that story about
the goaltending was
Glenn Healy. Yeah, like Glenn Healy and I were looking at each other after the first period of game 5. It's like, It was 2 or 3 nothing Lightning. It's like, how is this even possible? The Penguins were all over them in the first 10 minutes of the game. So it was just one of those weird series where the Lightning made the most of the looks that they had, and Guy Boucher was a throw pucks to the net and create scramble plays, and the Lightning did that with great effect against the Penguins and Fleury in that series. One reason they were able to win. But the big difference between this year's series and last year's series, I thought the Panthers had the upper hand. They were close, the games last year, but it felt like the Panthers were dictating play more. I feel after game 1, this series has been fairly evenly played.
That's fair.
It's just that the Lightning have made more in the 2 games the Lightning have lost. They have blinked basically defensively more than the Panthers have. The Panthers blinked defensively in game 3, which is why the Lightning were able to win.
They got to win tomorrow.
So we'll see. It's been close. I mean, it has been close.
Yeah.
How much do the Lightning have left to push, though, after that was a gut punch at the end of
emptied
game
the tank a
4.
little
You
bit,
got to
too.
forget it quickly. You got to regroup. You got to rev yourself up. And if it's the second game without Brandon Hagel, because he was suspended for game 3, I mean, really the third game without him. But if he's unable to go, rally around that like you did in game 3.
Yeah. Empty the tank again.
Yeah. They'll have the home crowd behind them. The home crowd, I'm sure, will be enthusiastic. The home crowd will not be happy with the Florida Panthers.
Yeah. Boo.
I'm sure that, they will be serenaded just like Hagel was before he got hurt.
Incredible.
And, we'll see if the Lightning can break this weird streak at home in the playoffs and extend the series. Can they do it? Yeah, they can do it. They can win tomorrow.
They can.
Extend the series and see what happens. See what happens in game 6.
Give yourself a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you can ask for. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll be doing the same thing. Maybe we'll get a guest.
From the studio.
From the studio. Thanks, Steve, Versnick, Jared Johnson, and all you who listen and participated. We appreciate you guys. You've been listening to Power Lunch right here on Lightning Radio.